On his way home from work, Chris accidentally drove through a red light before getting T-boned by a speeding Audi SQ7. Police responded to the scene. Amazingly, both drivers were able to walk away from the collision without serious injuries. Sadly, both vehicles were totaled, but what's really interesting is that both drivers were deemed to be responsible for the collision. The Audi driver was driving 15 miles over the speed limit at the time of the impact, and of course, Chris had run a red light. Chris's insurance provider paid him a settlement of $52,000 for his totaled Tesla. If you thought that video was crazy, we're just getting started. People driving way too fast, being way too stupid, and everything in between. Let's get started. Blaze was driving his Model S down a highway when traffic ahead of him slowed down nearly to a stop. Blaze slowed down, but the driver of a blue Ford Ranger didn't and slammed into an Audi SQ5. The impact shoved the SQ5 into the back of Blaze's dream car, his Model S P100D. A red Chevy can be seen escaping the sandwich at the last minute by crossing 2 lanes. Blaze stopped immediately and checked on everyone involved while calling 911. The 911 operator put him on hold, so he eventually called back and got put on hold again. 50 minutes after he gave up, they called him back to see what he'd called about. Just imagine if this emergency had been life or death. The driver of the SQ5 managed to get through to 911, and the state police came and assisted with clearing the vehicles out of the highway. The Tesla had a parking sensor error, but it was still drivable. Blaze filed a claim with the Ford driver's insurance provider, plus one with his own provider just in case. He doesn't know how much fixing the damage will cost, but he's praying his dream car won't be totaled. He did ask us to shout out his son Eric and the US Space Force. Semper Supra! This submitter was driving in Santa Clara, California when 2 drivers who appeared to be street racing caused a massive wreck that would end up shutting down the entire highway. A Nissan passed him at high speed before hitting a small bump and losing control. It smashed into the median barrier before slamming into a concrete wall on the right side of the highway. The impact sent the Nissan rolling back across the 5-lane highway before it stopped at the median barrier. Incredibly, no other vehicles were involved. Our submitter called emergency services and continued driving as he saw the wrecked car had effectively shut down the entire highway behind him. Floyd was driving his Model 3 on I-10 in Milton, Florida, cruising at around 70 miles per hour when a love seat fell out of a pickup truck in front of him. Floyd didn't see anyone hit the love seat, so he kept driving. When he caught up to the pickup driver, he was able to signal to him that he should stop. Mateo was driving his Model S in downtown Los Angeles when he witnessed the driver of a Toyota SUV make an aggressive lane change, nearly colliding with another driver who proceeded to brake check the Toyota. Suddenly, Mateo felt an impact to the side of his Tesla. After being brake checked, the Toyota driver crossed 3 lanes before slamming into Mateo's Tesla. Mateo approached the driver and found him pretty shaken up. He apologized right away and told Mateo he'd been distracted by the other driver brake checking him and hadn't noticed Mateo. Mateo told us the driver was pretty young, perhaps 18, and that this was his first collision and he had no idea what to do. Mateo had just moved to the United States, so this was his first collision as a US citizen, and he didn't know what to do either. In hindsight, he says it was pretty funny that they were both asking the other what they should do. In the end, it all got sorted out with the Toyota driver admitting fault. Mateo is now waiting for his scheduled appointment at a repair shop. Have you ever seen a double Honda bump? This video comes from Arun, who was driving his Tesla through an intersection when a Honda Odyssey turned in front of him. After Arun slammed into the Honda, it rolled backward into another Model Y. Nobody was hurt, but we're guessing that Honda will need a pair of new bumper covers. I wonder if they can get a combo discount. Dylan was driving down I-95 on a Saturday night in Stamford, Connecticut when he passed an SUV missing the front right wheel, throwing sparks all over the highway. The guy was literally driving on 3 wheels at full highway speed. Dylan said there was no indication he was intending to slow down, and he even drove past several exits. What do you think was going on here? When the traffic light JJ was stopped at turned green, a driver in the left lane turned right across JJ's lane, clipping the front of his Model Y. The other driver fled the scene, but thankfully there was a police car close behind JJ. The officer chased the fleeing driver down and made her provide JJ with her contact info. JJ is still going through the insurance claim process, but between the Teslacam footage and the police witness, he doesn't think there will be any argument about what happened. When traffic ahead of Anthony began slowing to a stop, he noticed the car behind him was not slowing down, so he swerved onto the shoulder to avoid being rear-ended. Sadly, the other driver did the same thing before colliding with Anthony's Tesla, impacting the right rear wheel. Anthony's Tesla came extremely close to colliding with the vehicle ahead of him when the impact occurred. Thank goodness he pulled over when he did. Anthony checked on the other driver and found him extremely agitated, so he called 911. When the California Highway Patrol arrived, they found the other driver at fault after seeing the Teslacam footage. They also cited him for expired registration. Thankfully, nobody was injured. It took 7 months and $13,000 to repair Anthony's Tesla. He told us the worst part of the whole ordeal was having to drive a Nissan Versa while waiting for his Tesla to get fixed. Anthony told us that Wham Bam rocks, and he probably recommends you subscribe, and he told us he's thankful to be back in his Tesla. Cyber's Model Y was parked on a Chicago street for 10 to 15 minutes while he picked up dinner. 3 minutes before he returned, an individual he's never seen before sanded the passenger side of his 2-month-old Tesla. Cyber doesn't know what makes people want to damage other people's things, and this definitely looks like Tesla hate since the criminal didn't do this to any other vehicles. In the Sentry Mode video, it looks like the vandal noticed the warning on the center screen, so perhaps he knew the car was recording him. Cyber filed a police report, but he hasn't heard back and doesn't know if they'll even be investigating it. Here's where you can help. If you recognize this criminal, get in touch and we'll forward the info to the police. Hopefully we can stop him from doing this to anyone else. Chris was taking his Ford F-150 to meet a buyer with his wife following him in their Model 3. But before selling it, he signaled for his wife to get behind him so he could give their Tesla one last coal roll. Actually, this wasn't intentional at all. Chris told us the truck's cruise control was set when it suddenly began smoking. After he signaled to his wife to follow him as he pulled over, he hit the accelerator, and that's when the smoke got so thick that his wife lost all visibility. Chris said this was the second time this happened on his way to meet this same buyer. After the first time, he paid a shop $800 to fix the issue, but they obviously hadn't. This time, Chris had to have the pickup towed 35 miles before the dealer told him a bad turbocharger seal would set him back another $1,600. With the pickup finally repaired, the same brave buyer finally bought it from Chris. He told us he'll never buy a combustion vehicle again. This submitter was driving his week-old Tesla Model 3 when a Bentley driver pulled out without looking, coming within inches of hitting him. That could have been a very expensive collision. Our submitter passed her a few blocks later, and that's when he saw that she was on her phone. Shocker! Yudcat was headed home from the airport with his wife and 2-year-old. This was the day after fresh snowfall, and the roads were dangerously slippery. He'd stopped for a red light when he noticed a Mitsubishi approaching a bit too fast from behind. The Mitsubishi driver tried to avoid his stopped Tesla by swerving to the left, but they still ended up scraping the back of it. They pulled over safely to exchange information, but the driver's husband wanted to settle the matter privately and initially refused to give Yudcat any insurance information. Yudcat had a bad feeling about that and only agreed to get a repair quote after insisting on taking a photo of the other driver's insurance information just in case. That proved to be a good decision. When he contacted the other driver with a repair quote from a Tesla-authorized body shop, they immediately began questioning him about the source of the estimate. Rather than argue with them, Yudcat contacted the other driver's insurance provider and let them take care of the repairs. Fixing his Tesla cost over $10,000 and took 20 days. Hugo was driving on a section of the German Autobahn with no speed limit, going so fast he was practically flying. Suddenly, a car to his right moved into his lane in front of him. Realizing there was no way he could slow down in time, Hugo laid on the horn while squeezing between the other car and the guardrail. He told us that, in hindsight, he should have started slowing down earlier. He isn't sure if the Tesla helped him avoid a collision with the other car. That said, he did say he clearly felt the Tesla push him back toward his own lane and away from the guardrail once he had passed the other car. Gary was heading home from work when the driver of a white car started crossing the road in front of him. The other driver stopped partway across the road, forcing the driver of a Mini Cooper to swerve into the oncoming lane, where it was clipped by a Ford Escape before spinning out. The driver of the white car then took off like nothing had happened. Gary chased after her to get her license plate number, and she then pulled over a few blocks away. Gary told her she needed to go back to the scene of the collision she'd caused. She was shaken up, but told him she'd return. Gary then headed back to the collision to check on the victims. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. He waited for the police with them, but after a long wait, he gave his contact info to the victims and left. The daughter of the Ford driver texted Gary later to tell him that neither the police nor the other driver ever came to the scene. He sent them his Teslacam footage, so thankfully they have crucial video evidence of what happened. Well done, Gary.
Wham! Bam, we got a Patreon man. Please support the show.